Monday. Yeah. What? Power cycle, yeah. So remove the HT and plug it in. Back. Yeah. Had to do it. Yeah. Oh, it is the PC, not the on it. Check, 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 check. Two. Go back one. It's. Back one. Need to come on back in.
Molly.
And I'm like.
Now you did it. Got that online. Like, something happened before we got to the. Like, people that were working for not really paying attention to us. Yes.
I'll fix it. I just need to get underneath there. No, it's. Um, Hey, Jason. Cycle through the other inputs on that. Not sure.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of Monday, May 8th of the Transportation Committee. It's good to see members of the public here and also, of course, who are watching us. It's always interesting how folks don't sit in the middle where the camera is and they sit over this way. But guess what, everybody? There are now new cameras throughout the council chamber, so we can see you anyway. Good morning or afternoon. All right, at this time, we'll start with our roll call.
Councilmember Green,
Present.
Councilmember Moreno, Councilmember Jeruso,
Present.
Councilmember Harris. Councilmember King. Present. We have a quorum.
Great. Thank you very much, members of the council, for being present today. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting, which took place on February the 14th. So moved by Council Member Vice President Moreno, seconded by Council Member King. Please vote your machines. And with that, 5-0, we have approval of the minutes from the February 14th meeting. Next on the agenda is a presentation on the city's Transportation Safety Board by Jeannie Donovan, Deputy Director, New Orleans Health Department, and Sarah McLaughlin Porteous, Director, Department of Public Works. Please come forward.
I can still have it.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Right. Jeannie Donovan, Deputy Director, New Orleans Health Department. Good morning, council members. Thanks for having us today. This dashboard has been a long time in the making. We're really excited to bring it to you today. We did brief many of your staff a couple of weeks ago on it, and they provided some important feedback. And so excited to share it with y'all today. Just a little bit of background on sort of why we decided to take on this dashboard and to bring this data on motor vehicle crashes more to the public forefront and into the light. Some of you may have seen the headlines in recent years that traffic fatalities in New Orleans are increasing. 2021 was the worst year on record since 2004 for number of motor vehicle related fatalities. And we know from some preliminary data, it's not been released yet publicly, but that number of fatalities actually increased again in 2022. So continuing to worsen. Since 2010, Orleans Parish has had the highest rates in Louisiana among the parishes for crashes resulting in injury and alcohol-related crashes resulting in injury. And for these reasons, really, transportation safety has been identified in a priority of two major plans here in the city. One is the Moving New Orleans Transportation Action Plan, which Sarah can share more about, and the Health Department's Community Health Assessment, which we put out in 2019 after really surveying the community and stakeholders around what would you like to see in your community to improve health and quality of life. And transportation safety was one of the things that we heard over and over again in those conversations and surveys. Another data point I wanted to share, it's top of mind because county health rankings were released very recently for this year. One of the major indicators of health that county health rankings looks at is years of potential life lost. And so they measure the number of years that are lost before the age of 75. And in Orleans Parish, the rate of years of life lost before 75 is actually 51% higher than the national average. And when we dig into that and look at what's causing that, cancer and heart disease are number one and number two, but right under that are accidents. And so we know, again, that we're losing a lot of lives prematurely with motor vehicle accidents being one of the big drivers of that category. And I'll just mention our Community Health Improvement Plan, which is the implementation side of that assessment that I mentioned. So in the 9 priority areas that we've identified in the Health Department's Community Health Improvement Plan, transportation safety is one of the 9. And so we actually have a strategic focus here. We have a collaborative effort around transportation safety. And really the first step in addressing this is looking at the data, bringing the data to stakeholders, to council members and others, so that we can develop some plans for improving it and addressing it.
Okay, so DPW has a critical role to play in ensuring that our local roads are safe for all users of the roadway. Of course, we're working very close collaboration with the Health Department, with the New Orleans Police Department, and the Office of Resilience and Sustainability. So this slide just shows the actions that are identified in the Transportation Action Plan, and they include improving the sidewalk networks for pedestrians, preventing crashes, focusing on school safety conditions, and developing a transportation safety dashboard similar to what is used in other major U.S. cities. So as part of developing the dashboard, DPW worked with the New Orleans Health Department and with ITI to form a street safety data team to analyze and interpret data so that our decisions continue to be data-driven. And we created the online dashboard with maps depicting crash locations by travel mode, injury, severity, frequency, and other factors. Effectively reducing preventable traffic injuries and deaths starts with understanding the data and collaborating across city agencies to develop solutions. Likewise, improving community awareness about the harm caused by preventable traffic injuries and possible solutions is key. The Transportation Safety Dashboard is the first critical step in this direction.
And this is just a slide really for the record and for your understanding of how we receive the data and turn it into the dashboard. So the data is all entered by individual crash by NOPD into the state's database, which is then aggregated by the Louisiana Department of Transportation. And then we at the state, ITI, really doing the bulk of the legwork, requested that full data set for Orleans Parish from DOTD. So it's a sort of a circle, starts here, goes to the state, and then ends up back here in our hands to populate the dashboard. We hope to cut out that middle person, so to speak, with DOTD eventually, but for now, we're really receiving the data directly from them. We'll receive it directly from NOPD. The dashboard is now live as of this morning, and so it will live on the Health Department's Transportation Safety Access page, on the city's Maps, Apps, and Dashboards homepage, and will be linked to from DPW's webpage. So there'll be multiple ways to access it, but probably most easily from this Maps, Apps, and Dashboards button on the city's main page. And actually, I realized right before that this link is different now that it's live, so I'm just going to pull it up from our homepage. I'll have to sign in. Okay, so here you can see the button here. And I'm just going to do a quick walkthrough of the dashboard, but I really do encourage you all and your staff to dig into it in more detail at your leisure. There's lots of information to glean, but again, I'm going to take you on a quick tour of it this morning to pique your interest. This first table really is a breakdown of the number of people killed or severely or moderately injured in a crash between 2020 and 2021, which are the two most recent years of data that we have available. And this table is really where we see that big takeaway, that there was a 32% increase in roadway fatalities between 2020 and 2021, and a 24% increase in roadway injuries. We also saw a 15% increase in hit and run crashes, resulting in fatalities and injuries between 2020 and 2021. And so we know that the roadways are getting more dangerous in recent years. As I mentioned earlier, preliminary data from NOPD tell us that this fatality rate continued to rise in 2022. The dashboard will be updated in the fall with that 2022 data, so we'll continue to look at those trends, but we know just from what we're hearing that it's continued to increase. I believe the number of people killed was 75 last year. The next set of tables really looks at fatal, severe, and moderate injury crashes by mode. And so you can see over the last 5 years, by pedestrian, bicycle, motor vehicle, motorcycle, and other, the trends that we're seeing in fatal, moderate, and severe crashes. And so we can see that in these tables, the increase in fatalities is present across all modes with the exception of motorcycles. So you can see here over the last 5 years, this increase with a slight decrease in fatalities for motorcycles and ATVs in 2021. Notably, the number of pedestrian fatalities, I'll scroll back up here, has almost doubled between 2020 and 2021. And so we really see this as a data point that we really need to dig more into and understand why are so many people who are walking on our roadways dying. We did see a dip in the number of crashes resulting in moderate injury during the COVID lockdowns in 2020. We did get that question from staff. What were the impacts of COVID on traffic fatalities? You know, there were fewer people on the roadways in 2020, but really we actually saw, while we did see a decrease in the number of moderate injuries, we actually saw an increase in the number of fatalities and severe injuries. And we think that's because with fewer people on the roadways, there were more reckless driving behaviors that resulted in these high severity and fatal crashes. And that's a pattern that was seen nationwide. I'll scroll down to look at crashes by month. We see that generally the spring and the fall have the highest number of crashes resulting in death and injury. And we can filter this here on the side by year to look at it, and we really see that trend across time. And we know that this is the time when we have lots of tourists in town, we have more people on the roadways, it's a busier time of year in the city, and so no surprises there. By hour of the day, this table is very busy, but it really just shows you with a 24-hour clock from 1 in the morning to midnight, when are we seeing the most crashes on the roadways, resulting in fatalities or injuries. And we see that, no surprise, that rush hour in the evening, particularly in the evening rush hour, is when the number of serious crashes increases. And we also see evening weekends are particularly dangerous, which is a good segue to risky driving behaviors. These next pie charts show how by severity of crash, what sort of citations or violations were involved in those crashes. And we can see here that in 20, let me see. There we go. Reset, okay, sorry, I clicked on 2018 and now it's stuck there. Refresh it. Yeah, there's a lot of years here. Okay, so if I click on 2021, which is our most recent year, you can see that there were 49 crashes that resulted in a fatal or severe or moderate injury in 2021, and 13 crashes involving drugs. The most frequently cited traffic violations are here in this pie chart, and we can see that the most frequently cited traffic violations and serious crashes are careless operation and failure to yield, which are these green and purple pieces of the pie, followed closely by this orange slice of the pie, which is following too closely. We've got tables here related to the number of occupants involved in fatal, severe, or moderate injury crashes not wearing a seatbelt, and those reported as a hit and run. And I've got 2021 selected here, so let's see if I can select all. If you select all, you can kind of see the trends over time with those two citations. And lastly, ITI really worked to divide these crashes out by council district by year. And so you can take a look here. This map, actually, you can click on to zoom in on your particular council district. And this table shows you over a course of time how many people were killed in this top table and how many people were injured in this second table over the course of 5 years in your particular council district. And you can really look at those trends, and you can zoom in on the hotspots to see which streets, which intersections, and what parts of your district are the most risky. And Sarah, I'll let Sarah talk about in a minute sort of how they're using this data to plan and implement interventions from an infrastructure standpoint. But again, you can click on this map and it takes you to a new link where ITI has really mapped out these spots where fatalities or injuries have occurred. That's two different maps here. And then lastly, there's a link here. This is actually a federal data set that they publish where you can zoom in again down to the street level to look at crashes, and actually has the specific crash data linked to it around what time did it occur, what date did it occur, what were the details of the crash itself. It'll load. It's slow internet. And you can kind of get a sense here. I don't think you can zoom here. No. Of how that looks. I'll just show one quick example. I'll type in my zip code and it zooms in, and then you can hover over and see that this crash happened on a Tuesday between 3 and 4 p.m. There was one fatality and it involved a pedestrian. So this you can zoom right down to the street level on. And then I'll head back to the PowerPoint just to wrap things up. So like I said, we're planning to update this data with 2022 crash data when it comes out in this fall from the State Department of Transportation. We're trying to work on that data transfer from NOPD to ITI, so we can cut out the state, which creates just more layers and takes more time. And then we want to do further analysis by council district and the high injury corridors that we've identified through the dashboard. And so those are all next steps planned. And then importantly, we've also got a lot of transportation safety projects planned within DPW that I'll turn over to Sarah to talk a little more about.
Yeah, thank you, Jeannie. So I'll just give you an update on some of our current and planned actions to improve transportation safety around the city. So in terms of some of the physical and infrastructure investments that are improving the safety of the roadway for all users, we've got 6 federally funded projects in various stages that are focused on safety improvements at specific intersections. You've probably noticed the pedestrian hybrid beacon installation on the Lafitte Greenway at North Carrollton Avenue. That has been installed. They're finalizing some of the features in there, and it should be online by the end of this month. So we're excited about that. Other locations include Reed Boulevard, Broad Street, Airline Highway at Monroe, Berman Place at Holiday, and South Carrollton Avenue underpass. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard complete streets improvements that's under construction and still scheduled to be complete this summer. We also have our Moving New Orleans Bikes program that is seeking to create lower stress connected network around the city. Our AP Turo Avenue complete streets improvements that's under construction and should be wrapping up soon. Various safety studies with the Regional Planning Commission, including I-10 service roads in New Orleans East and an upcoming study on Chef Mentor Highway. Also, the completion of a local road safety plan with RPC, which focuses on lower cost solutions such as signage and striping, where there are frequent crashes on local streets as opposed to on state highways. This is going to be wrapped up by this summer of 2023. Development of a comprehensive roadway safety action plan. So the city is going to be receiving a $750,000 federal award to develop an action plan with community participation as part of that. So we're excited about that. It's going to be an 18-month process that'll be beginning mid-2023. And the outcome is a strategic street level plan to install safety interventions on streets with severe and fatal injuries. Improving transportation safety around schools, the K through 12 school zone ordinance change, which we're going to talk about in more detail in the next presentation, and also crossing guard materials and training by our partners in the health department. Implementation of a speed awareness and management program. So this is going to be one of our ARPA funded projects for right-of-way improvements. We've already started testing this through the deployment of speed radar signs. We had one on Jefferson Avenue. We then moved it over to Rampart and then to Chantilly in the east. So we're very excited about that study. Mapping of street level asset data to identify gaps and barriers using high resolution street level imagery. So this is going to help us to detect things like missing signage and pavement markings in a more comprehensive way than 311 allows us to do. So we're very excited about that. Further analysis of our 311 data related to roadway issues, such as where people report speeding issues. We have a lot of those reports compared to where the crash hotspots actually are happening. And then finally, mobility and safety outreach specialists. So these are key hires that are in process. A mobility and safety outreach specialist, transportation policy and program manager in the Office of Resilience and Sustainability and Injury Prevention staff positions in roadwork. In the New Orleans Health Department. Again, these are key positions for which DPW, roadwork, ORS, and the Health Department are actively trying to fill.
And again, this is just reiterating, we're releasing the dashboard today, and we plan to update again with 2022 data in the fall.
So I think that concludes our presentation. Happy to take questions.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. I look forward to the implementation of some of the suggestions and also the programs that we're going to have in place. In the midst of all that, I just want to remind people in general that so many of the accidents are caused by speeding or caused by impairment, and that while the city council and the administration are going to be working really hard to make our city safer and our streets safer, there still has to be public responsibility, those who are driving. Unfortunately, last week I was at a site where there are intersection crossings and there are lines, there are sufficient traffic lighting at the corner of Esplanade and Claiborne, and yet someone still just drove through at a high rate of speed, even though there were bikers and pedestrians in place. So I'm glad to see these take place, and I know that they will have a impact on our community. In addition to all that we're going to be doing on the governmental side, I just want to encourage people to be more cognizant of the fact that when you're driving a couple of 1,000 pounds, that if it crashes into a car, a motorcycle, or pedestrian, has the potential to cause grave injury, and that we should all be more aware of what we are doing. We'll come back to that as we talk about especially the school board, but I appreciate the fact that this dashboard is online now, and I encourage the public to go and take a look at it, and neighborhood associations, for example, to look at it so that they can know some of the data that's in it, and that I will look forward to us as a council and the administration using it as a tool, working with Public Works and the Department of Health to put in place measures that reduce these number of accidents. Looking at numbers, you never really pay attention on an individual basis, but seeing all of the numbers is kind of frightening, kind of chilling, if you will, that there are so many accidents. I clearly see many of them, but you never really put into perspective the numbers, because I'm not out all the time at rush hour. I'm not out all the time from 12 a.m. until 7 a.m. So just in general, I'm looking forward to the dashboard and the implementation of those programs, making our city safer. Councilmember Leslie Harris, questions?
Thank you, Council Chair Green. So I have a few questions about this. It's great to see you all, but law enforcement is not here, right? So, you know, I think a big part of this is monitoring, speeding, monitoring, reckless driving. What communications are you having with NOPD about this? And are there any alternatives to NOPD given the manpower shortage that we're exploring as far as monitoring speed and reckless driving?
Yeah, so NOPD is aware of the dashboard. We've communicated and collaborated with them on the creation of it. I can't comment on where they are with enforcement.
Are there any mechanical means? I know we have speed cameras throughout the city. I mean, what else can we do? Are there any other things that we can do other than speed cameras, traffic light cameras?
I think the ARPA funded program that I told you about is really trying to understand people's behaviors around speed so that we can make some data-driven decisions in terms of, you know, the kinds of things that we want to have in the future, whether we want to have those digital speed signs that we've been testing out, whether we need to look at changing some speed limits in some locations. You know, I'm excited about what that program is going to be able to tell us.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a New Orleanian, we've all learned to pause, even though it's a green light, to let somebody fly through an intersection, because it's going to happen and you're going to get hit if you don't. So again, I think that this is great that what you're presenting, but I do think that NOPD should be at the table for the next presentation, again, to talk about reckless driving, speeding, and what they're doing to monitor this behavior. The other thing I have relates to ATVs, which Councilmember Green, I know that you are probably have questions about. We still get a lot of questions and reports of ATVs doing donuts, speeding. I know we've talked to DPW about getting things like speed bumps installed or some other traffic calming measures to prevent these vehicles from doing what they do. Is it still not an option to do speed bumps, or what can we do? Is there an alternative to speed bumps?
Yeah, there are definitely alternatives. Just as an example, at St. Bernard and Henriette DeLeo, we've had continued issues like this. We had some water barricades placed out there to help with preventing that. Unfortunately, people know that you can
Move them.
empty them
Yep.
and move them.
Yep.
We just got them back into position earlier this week and they were already moved. So we're strategizing about some longer term alternatives. That was really a temporary measure there at that location. But it is something that we're looking at around the city.
Yeah, I mean, I think like Julia Street, there's always, you know, people who speed down Julia Street. And I know you guys have to do traffic studies to install lights,
Yes.
but given the
Signs, lights, and
yeah, but given the fact that this seems to be a high traffic area, especially for illegal stunt driving, et cetera. Again, I think something like a crime camera, traffic camera installed there would be good, just to try to catch the folks as they're doing these illegal stunts and driving. And then finally, one more question. I know you're focusing on school safety conditions, but there are areas and organizations, and I'm thinking about Aretha Case Castle Haley, I can't talk today, guys, where there are children because they go to YEP, they go to the Net, they go to Cafe Reconcile, and I know that they've requested sort of traffic calming measures as well. I'm wondering if we can't expand sort of school zones to areas where we know that there are gonna be kids. Even though they're not necessarily designated as school. Is that possible? Do we need additional legislation to do that?
I think we would need additional legislation to do that. The proposed change that we're talking about is expanding school zones from K through 7 to K through 12. So it would not apply to these other areas.
So I'm happy to work with you if you'd like, on these areas where we know that there are kids.
Yeah.
And crossing the street and going from one side of the street to the other, and highly trafficked areas where, you know, they might get hit. So happy to work with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Councilmember King.
Hey, good afternoon. Ms. Donovan, can you go back to the board, the dashboard?
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, I want to try to narrow in on a specific intersection, 70114, if that's possible.
On this one, and then, let's see.
Yeah. On,
Here we go. Here you go.
so I'm looking, I want to zoom in on, Wall Boulevard and General de Gaulle, if that's possible.
There's General de Gaulle wall right here.
Does it show how many accidents occurred in that area?
And so this right here is just fatalities. So we're showing one here at General de Gaulle and Mardi Gras, but not at Wall. But let me go to the injuries in your district. So here we are right here. And these are not exact points because we want to preserve some level of confidentiality, and so we can't look at hover over and see the crash the way you can on the federal database. So it's really just a hot spot. So you can see the darker the spot, the more number of crashes that are there. And ITI can, if you'd like more detail on how they did the hot spotting, they're here to discuss. But you can see here General de Gaulle and Walls right here at this intersection.
Yeah, that's about right. How many accidents? It's hard to see.
That is actually a state intersection there, just an FYI.
Let's see, if we zoom in, looks like, I don't want to speak for, ITI did the hot spotting where they sort of tried to cover over the exact number because Department of Transportation at the state level has some issues with showing exact crash location. So this is sort of again, a heat map, so to speak. But
Right. And Mrs. Porter is correct. It's a state area. I just get confused because we get calls.
Yeah.
And I can't say, oh, it's state. I just want to kind of get an idea of the amount of crashes there.
yeah, Karen, you want to come up? And I think, again, we have the individual level data from the state on every crash. And so if you want to work with ITI to look at those exact intersections, I think they can do that with you.
I didn't have any other questions. That's
Oh, okay.
Good idea.
That was it, Councilman King?
Yes, that was it.
Okay. Any other questions from council members? Well, once again, I want to thank you all for being here today, and this is the beginning. The dashboard is now online. We'll take a look at it. We'll encourage the public and neighborhood groups to take a look at it. And of course, if they have any comments, I guess the way to do it best would be to individual offices, and we'll, get it to you. But I look forward to the use of it in terms of being able to identify programs and resources that can make our city safer. And I just continue to emphasize the need for people to be aware on all sides of the dangers involved with transportation, vehicles, pedestrians, motorcycles. ATVs is a interesting issue just in general. There are so many ATVs in New Orleans. I think sometimes that they must be legal and I'm missing it, but there are so many. But I know how difficult it is, especially on the lakefront. We have areas where they drive an ATV and just zoom off and dare you to try to find them. But that's just part of the building process of changing some parts of the culture of our city. And part of the culture of our city sometimes is that the public be darned, I'm gonna use this vehicle and get where I need to get as quickly as possible. And I'm also going to think that I won't be caught, which is a concern. But what you all are doing is great in terms of information, because I do want to know those hot spots so that we can install lights sometimes, maybe flashing lights. We may not have the resources to go around and, track individual movements, but we can help slow people down by reminding them. But I appreciate this greatly and look forward to working with you on it. Do you all have any comments as we conclude?
I'll just want to say thanks to ITI. They really are the brains behind the dashboard and have worked with us so closely to make it happen. So just wanted to give them a shout out.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your technical work, and this is going to be something that's going to be very helpful in our city as we use it more and encourage the public to recognize the value of it. Thank you very much. All righty.
Green, we have one online
Yeah.
comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
This is from Charles Marsala. He says, in West End Lakeshore Park along the west roadway out to the lake retention wall is part of Breakwater Drive. In an online recent survey of 140 people, approximately 90% of those responding favored keeping Breakwater Drive and converting it to a bike path that would connect the bike path from Jefferson Parish along the lake to the bike path in West End going out to the point. This would dramatically increase transportation safety as many enjoy riding out to the point and West End. In the same survey, 95% favored retaining the 29 heritage oak trees and recognizing the pelican colony and eagle habitats as a bird sanctuary. However, it appears there is an ongoing effort by the Municipal Yacht Harbor Management Corporation to build full-service bars where the marina and bird habitat currently exist. There could be federal funds for the bike path. Please evaluate this option before spending money on designing more bars for the area. The 2017 Regional Planning Commission study concluded the area to be saturated with bars and restaurants. Studies show New Orleans needs more open space and recreation. A bike path out of to the point and not part of the existing road is much safer. And that's it for the online comment.
Okay, we appreciate the online comment. Thank you very much, submitter. All righty. Our next item on the agenda involves our Director of Public Works and Jeannie Donovan again, and we're having discussion and voting on ordinance calendar number 34-133, which is to amend and or reordain a section of the Code of the City of New Orleans relative to Traffic Engineers Authority to designate crosswalks and safety zones, especially school zones, which we'll be talking about today. So our presenters, Ms. Porteous, if you will start.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss the school zone K-12 ordinance change. There's been a lot of discussion for some time about expanding school zone eligibility to more schools. And before I begin, I think you all have received a copy of the map and what is displayed here. And basically what it is showing is all of the schools identified in green are currently in school zones. All of the dots that are in red are schools that would become eligible should this ordinance change happen. So currently per Sydney ordinance, only elementary and middle schools, grades 7 or lower are designated as school zones. High schools, grade 8 or higher are not designated as school zones. In recent years, the Department of Public Works has seen an increase in the number of requests from your offices and from residents directly for school zone designations at schools that do not qualify under the existing ordinance for school zones. So revising the school zone ordinance to include grades K-12 is going to ensure that every student in New Orleans, no matter what school they attend, will have equitable access to safe streets while they travel to and from school, and ensure that all students can walk to school safely. We also know that there are some inconsistencies out there in terms of our current signage in school zones. And so this is an opportunity not only to amend the code, but also to take a look at what's out there and address some of those inconsistencies in a thoughtful way. The expansion of school zone ordinance to K-12 schools is anticipated to reduce crashes, especially severe and fatal crashes in the proximity of schools across New Orleans. And so as we talk about data and data-driven decisions, I think it's important to share some data with you today, as it certainly does support this ordinance revision. Over a 5-year period, so between 2017 and 2021, there were 6,532 reported traffic crashes near schools during school zone operational hours. And most of these crashes, about 63%, 4,090, happened near high schools, which are not currently designated as school zones. Only 37%, or 2,442 of these crashes were near elementary or middle schools with school zone designations. And then 5 out of 6 traffic fatalities, or 83%, occurred near schools that currently do not have school zone designations. So in terms of what we expect this will accomplish, expanded school zone ordinance would result in more consistent administration and enforcement of school zone regulations across all K through 12 schools in the city. Expanded school zone ordinance would enhance safe and equitable access for all citizens to not only access schools, but other vital community assets such as grocery stores, bus stops, and parks and playgrounds. Expansion of the school zone designations would not only slow vehicular speeds near school campuses, but also prohibit distracted driving, such as the use of a cell phone. So just want to also talk about our implementation, our estimated implementation timeline and what we anticipate this is going to cost. So it's going to result in new safety zone protections for approximately 50 schools, and that includes both public and private schools. And then an additional 24 K through 7 schools that actually have the school zone designation, but might require additional signage that would be covered as part of this. And so we're estimating the cost of new signage. It's going to be under $200,000, and we do plan to support this with bond funds. Installation would take about a year to occur. So basically by the start of the 24-25 school year, all of the upgrades will have been implemented. And the school zones will become effective as soon as the signage is installed. We will be communicating in advance of the placement, both with the schools and just with the community broadly, just so people are all aware of the change. And we're going to be prioritizing high volume corridors and locations where there have been safety issues previously. That's how we'll determine how we're going to move forward with the change. And just to follow up on the question Councilmember Harris, you asked about with the net school, that is one that will be eligible with this change. And so it's going to improve safety in that area.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I'm so pleased that we are considering schools that have not been incorporated into the safety zone previously.
Yeah. One other thing I was going to add, and there have been so many people involved in this, but I definitely want to thank Jennifer Woolley with our mobility and safety team, Dan Jotras with the Office of Resilience and Sustainability, Maren Stevens, the Health Department, or formerly with the Health Department. I'm sure there are many others, but a lot of people that have been working collaboratively to get this.
Great. Appreciate the work of the administration, the Department of Public Works, and all the person that you mentioned. I do want to clarify for the public that this allows DPW to school zones equitably, which is being done, including high schools, which interestingly enough don't qualify right now. I don't know why.
Qualify now, but they
right
will
now,
with this.
Right. I don't know why that ever happened, but I can understand it's the past. But we can fulfill requests from all schools. So I want to publicly say to all schools, there should be no reason that you should not take advantage of the fact that the city of New Orleans is looking at data and is looking at safety and wants to have assurances or be assured that all of our students are safe throughout the city. So there'll be a process that you'll know that can be used for requests. And of those 41 schools that are not eligible and those that require enhancements, I encourage all of those schools to contact the Department of Public Works and make that request to be incorporated. The traffic engineer only has the authority to designate school zones at public and private schools K through 7, just to confirm. So this is to improve from now K through 7 to K through 12.
Right, and on the map, these are the schools that are currently ineligible, but will be eligible with the change. So these are schools that we're planning to.
Right. I look forward to an announcement from you that all of the schools that are ineligible have chosen to make a request that they can be incorporated into it, because there's a lot of thought that is going into this. And also it's just about the general safety. I encourage everyone to recognize that, again, today I'm surprised by certain numbers. Didn't know that there were all those crashes near schools. It really needs to be taken into account where every school recognizes the value of this. So Councilman Giarrusso.
Thank you. My questions are about the equitable nature of this and consistency. So first of all, the words "as they deem necessary" are used in the first 4 sections, but not the last one. Why is that?
Is that as the city traffic? I don't have the.
Yeah, it says the city traffic engineer may words, and then usually it ends with "as they deem necessary." So it's not consistent between all sections.
I'm gonna look at that.
Okay.
Get back to you.
All right, well then, second is number 3, instead of saying "as they deem necessary," says "as they deem advisable." Why the difference?
And some of this is existing, I think, existing language that we've tweaked. Let me just.
I mean, all I have is the
It
copy.
should be
that's-
consistent, so we'll look at that.
Well, and then I guess the last thing is, if we're looking for consistency as somebody deems necessary, seems to be a subjective evaluation and not an objective one. So what I'm looking for is how we provide objectivity to this as opposed to subjectivity.
Okay.
Because look, just read with me. Number 1, the city traffic engineer may, 1, designate and maintain by appropriate traffic control devices, crosswalks at intersections where, first stop, in their engineering judgment, there is particular danger to pedestrians crossing the roadway and at such other places as they deem necessary. I mean, I don't know where that is. And I don't know how to objectively explain that to somebody.
I'm gonna ask Dan Jotras.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, committee. Good afternoon,
There you
committee.
go.
Are we back to this one? Good afternoon, committee. I'll figure out microphones eventually. Councilmember, to answer your question, that specific phrase is not something that is modified from the current code. But I think we're happy to look at it to make it more consistent between the 5 sections. The "as they may deem necessary" is intended to be referring to that engineering judgment, so that the engineer can apply that level of professional scrutiny. You know, we can't necessarily lay out an ordinance that imagines every particular scenario. So we're maintaining that authority that the traffic engineer has to use their engineering judgment in other scenarios related to that.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're trying to do, and it's laudable. And I mean, obviously, we want to make sure we have safety and crosswalks and traffic control devices. But what I worry about is if you put one thing one place and not somewhere else, and we're leaving it to somebody's subjective opinion, who's not an elected official, by the way, then that becomes tricky to explain.
Yes, it can be subjective, but it's also, as a professional traffic engineer, they're professionally certified and they are putting their certification out there. So that's standing behind the judgment that they are making. It's not just any person on the street making a decision. They're using their professional credentials as they've been licensed to be an engineer in the state of Louisiana. So that's, and their license, holds them responsible. So there is a level of accountability there.
I mean, can I just ask this? Can we just remove the words "as they deem necessary"? Because I mean, that's like, again, I'll read something else that is shorter. Designate and maintain by appropriate traffic control devices, mid-block marked crosswalks and other pedestrian treatments.
It's probably all covered under the city traffic engineer may.
Yeah,
it's not-
right. I mean, that's-
Probably not
Yeah.
in any of those sections.
Right, but I guess, again, I'm just trying to avoid a world where somebody looks at this and then they come back and they said, you did something in District Z, but not in District I. I don't want to use our own districts. And so how come, and that's unfair and blah, blah, blah. And I think you want a objective test with somebody who's using their professional expertise in order to provide the answer. But I agree, Sarah, it seems either like one subsumes most of these, or you can just kind of get rid of as they deem necessary to kind of suffice. Does that work?
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's giving traffic engineer may, it also says, just to point out, the traffic engineer may, doesn't say will or shall.
That's what I mean. I feel like they're all covered under may,
Right, right. So
using their judgment.
I just, again, I would delete as it solves the problem because section 5 talks about relying on a study. Nothing else talks about a study. 3 has advisable, and then 4 of them have as they deem necessary. It just seems like we can make it more consistent.
Yeah, we'll review that change with the law department and then confirm with them.
Okay,
And for section 5, part of the main reason it doesn't say as they deem necessary is section 5 is the only one that focuses on a discrete binary choice. It's either a school or it's not a school.
right.
So there's not, but if somewhere in here, let's see, they can also designate other areas outside of the immediate school zone as a school crossing.
Mhm.
And that's an area, again, where the engineer can exert can utilize their engineering judgment to make that determination if a school crossing is necessary outside of a school zone.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Councilman, would you like to, are you gonna offer that as an amendment?
Yeah, let's make sure that the law department doesn't have major heartburn about it. And then I'd be happy to offer it as amendment, on Thursday. Because we can't amend, and much to Councilmember Morel's chagrin, we can't amend in committee.
For now.
For now, right, yes, for now. But
Okay.
I would be happy to report favorably out of committee.
Okay.
I have a quick question, Councilman Green.
Yes, Councilman.
Schools that's closing, what's the process to take away the designated crosswalks or flashing lights? Not get tickets where schools used to be, but are no longer there.
Yeah, if a school is not, if there is no school at a location where it was formerly a school and are you saying there's still a flashing beacon?
Right, right.
Yeah.
I know some places won't be schools in a couple months, but they are now. Like the schools
Won't be
won't,
schools, or you mean the flashing
the
beacons are
schools are
not?
moving, but the beacons are gonna be there and the flashing, the ticket lights are gonna still be, the ticket cameras are gonna still be there. How do we change that?
So the beacons aren't active in the summertime,
Right, for the fall, I mean,
in the fall.
yeah.
So if a school was, if a building was formerly a school, that school is no longer there, what would
Correct.
happen if people were issued tickets?
Issue tickets, yeah, and. the
Yeah,
flashing
if
lights.
there isn't a school there, it's not an active school zone. But if people are issued tickets, we need to know about it.
So right, I noticed on the active school zone, but the lights aren't removed and the traffic cameras still remain in place. Although it's no longer a school zone because the school has been removed or,
Yeah, so if a school is planning to vacate a building, will no longer be a school, they need to notify the Department of Public Works so that we can decommission
okay,
that
that's,
zone.
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How does the school make a request?
So I'm glad you mentioned that again. So they don't have to make the request. So every school on this list is going to be, is going to have a designated school zone, or would have a designated school zone should this ordinance revision move forward.
Okay,
So schools do not have to make a request. They would all be included.
all right. And I want to follow that up with a comment to the public. You won't see all of this happening by the next school year. Now, you've emphasized that
Yes,
it's gonna take a process. It's a process involving government and working it the right way with public participation. So the goal is that by the start of the school year for 2024, we'll
exactly.
see all of these schools
Yes.
included
and-
within this.
Yes,
safety
and
law.
we will communicate, as I said, we still have some field visits to do to verify some of the things that we've collected here and presented here today. But as we put together our prioritization list, we will certainly share that with you all, and we'll share that publicly so people can understand, the order in which we plan to implement these changes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I do have a card from Ms. Tiffany Crawford, the Louisiana Association of Public Charter Schools. Ms. Crawford, you do have a comment, remarks, but you are free to come to the microphone. The Louisiana Association of Public Charter Schools supports protective measures in the form of school zones for all children.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think you just read my comment. And council members.
Okay,
But yes, we do support school zones for all children. We think that those protective measures will ensure that even if we have not had incidents, we won't.
thank you. Appreciate you being here and your card. Are there any online comments?
Yes, sir. First is from Jenny Takakura. She says, I'm in favor of any proposal which will increase the safety of pedestrians and cyclists on the city of New Orleans. More separated walkways and bike paths are needed for citizens to feel safe enough to use other transportation than driving their cars. And the less people drive, the more health benefits for all. And the next comment is from Disha Greeley. She says, allow the city's traffic engineers authority to designate crosswalks, safety zones, school zones, et cetera, especially regarding Hain Boulevard in preparation for the development of Lincoln Beach. Eric Greeley comments, allow the city's traffic engineers authority to designate crosswalks, safety zones, school zones, et cetera, specifically regarding area of New Orleans East that requires it along major corridors of Bullard Avenue, Reed Boulevard, Crowder Boulevard, and Morrison Road, Hain Boulevard, Lake Forest Boulevard, and Chef Mentor Highway. And the last comment is from Candace Taylor. She says, my husband and I have and will continue to advocate for complete streets in New Orleans East. There is a complete streets policy on the books, ordinance number 24706 MCS. Why aren't there any in New Orleans East? We have asked for traffic calming due to speeding. We have asked for pedestrian crosswalks, new sidewalks, and bike lanes along Hain Boulevard since last year. There was a 4-car accident just yesterday. There have been countless accidents and near misses, as well as severe fatalities. As we discuss and make plans for safe zones, school zones, crosswalks, et cetera, Hain Boulevard must be part of that conversation. We are well aware that this is a state highway, but aren't sidewalks city-owned. Please work with the state towards a safer street for all road users, especially with Lincoln Beach coming soon. There are elderly homes, schools, churches, and residents along this corridor. There's a school located at 8400 Hain Boulevard, and I do not see them listed on the school zone eligibility status map. That's it for the comments.
Could you comment on that school in particular?
What was the name of the school?
She didn't provide the name. It's 8400 Hain Boulevard.
Okay, just make a note for the record. I know it's the site. Well, I'm not gonna say, I'm not looking at the address, so I just wanted to make sure that if a comment was mentioned, that we
Yeah.
follow up on it.
The other thing I would mention is, we are working closely with DOTD. We are aware of the issues on Hain Boulevard, and we are working on this.
Yes, unfortunately, Hain Boulevard, many people view it as in the past where it was a speed strip, that it was a straight shot from, and assuming that you didn't get caught by the traffic lights, that you were just gonna be able to zoom. And I think certainly that needs to be changed, not just for the development of Lincoln Beach, which is an important development, but just in general, because there have been so many accidents on that thoroughfare. So thank you very much for the members of the public who made those comments, and thank you for your presentation today. In a couple of respects today with the dashboard and also with this, first off, I'm making an assumption that we're gonna pass this ordinance. I gotta vote on it first, but if it should pass along with the dashboard, I think we've moved in a direction of enhancing public safety on our streets, in a significant way. So I appreciate, even though the meeting is kind of low key, what has been accomplished today thus far. So I will move for adoption of ordinance number 34-133. May I have a second? Seconded by Councilmember Jeruso. Are there any comments from council members or the public? I have no cards. So 3 yeas in favor, no nays. So ordinance calendar number 34-133 will be brought before the full body of the council on Thursday. Appreciate the work of everyone who is here today, who has supported these 2 measures that are gonna, I think, help. There's one program and 1 measure that's gonna help keep our city and our youth safer. So I look forward to the approval and the implementation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And if there be, let me make sure. If there be no other matters to be brought before the committee, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. It's been so moved by Councilmember Jeruso and seconded by Councilman King. Will that be good? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is adjourned. Thank you very much, council members and members of the public for your attendance today at this important meeting, which lasted 55 minutes.